So I started playing with the steering wheel a little bit and my thumb went straight through the airbag. And I peeled it a little bit. There was no airbag in there. We look at cars, so many cars across the country that we start to see patterns, especially with salvage title vehicles. They're some of the trickiest cars to look at, and there's some of the shadiest dealers we look at as well. There's a pattern with some dealers. We keep going back to them, and they're dealerships that buy these salvage title vehicles. They fix them, and they fix them very poorly. Welds are bad, frames are bad, just not safe cars to be driving. It seems like whenever we see a dealer have a car like that, most of their cars are like that. They buy cars that have been hit really hard because they're the cheaper ones to buy, and they don't have a qualified guy to fix them, but they do whatever they can to make it look decent enough to sell. So the outside might look a little bit okay, but once you dig under that paint and under those fenders and get into the car a little bit, they're not safe. Frames are damaged and, like I say, poor welds. For example, one time I was looking at one and the steering wheel didn't look right to me. So I started playing with the steering wheel a little bit and my thumb went straight through the airbag. And I peeled it a little bit. There was no airbag in there, but there also was no airbag light on. So doing a little research, I found that overseas you can buy these fake looking airbags that go on your steering wheel which isn't an airbag, and it's got the sensor and it's telling the computer system that it hasn't exploded or went off at any time and that it's a functioning airbag when in fact it's just a piece of cardboard is what they basically made it of. That's why my finger went through so easily, and it's not going to help you in an accident because it's fake. And those kind of dealers typically tend to sell that stuff over and over. They don't have good cars. And there's different parts of the country that seem to specialize in those kind of cars. Southern Texas, most of Florida, especially the Miami area, Chicago, New Jersey. Those are areas we see a lot of that kind of stuff. Not to say everybody's bad there. We look at a lot of good cars in those areas, but man, that's where most of that bad stuff comes from. The West Coast, not so bad. We see that stuff here and there, but nothing in major areas where we see lots of it. It's typically stays in those states I named. So when it comes to salvage title cars, I think some are really good deals. If a car's been in an accident and it's been repaired well and it's safe and there's a great savings to buy that salvage title vehicle, I think that's great. When it comes to flood vehicles, they're a little different. Lemon Squad looks at a lot of flood vehicles around the country. Whenever we have a hurricane or something comes through where there's a lot of floods, we never look at the flood cars in those areas. The insurance companies will ship them out, and we look at them in like Phoenix or places that nobody's looking for flood damage. And they think they can get away with it that way, and they can. So it's another reason to get an inspection. If you're looking at a flood car, the wiring issues that pop up with flood vehicles, they might be working great today, and those wiring issues might pop up tomorrow or 6 months or a year, and they're the hardest cars to diagnose and fix. Not many techs want to work on a flood vehicle. Unless you have 1 million subs on YouTube, don't buy a flood vehicle. Not all salvage title vehicles are bad. A theft of a vehicle comes back as a salvage title vehicle as well. And those cars usually don't have any issues. And if they do, it's just superficial, easy to fix. So theft cars are some of the best cars to buy that have a salvage title. We typically go out after the repairs have been done to see if they were done correctly. But we do a lot of inspections on salvage title vehicles before they've been repaired, just to see what the extent of the damage is as well, to give our customer an idea of what he's in for when he goes to do the repairs. When buying a salvage title vehicle, you got to make sure it's worth it. You want to be 30 to 40% off the back end to make it worth buying. But you should still always have it checked out. So with Lemon Squad, looking at cars all over the country, you get to see different types of things. East Coast, from about New Jersey straight up the coast, worst rust in the country. It's hard to recommend to buy a car in that area, especially if it's got some miles on it. We look at cars in that area that have serious rust issues. We've seen cars with 20,000 miles on them and the frame be rotted out just because the rust is so bad in that area. If a West Coast person buys an East Coast car and gets it shipped back, we might tell them there's some rust issues underneath it, but not bad enough where it should keep you from buying it. Maybe has surface rust. But when you bring it back to California, your mechanic's going to see this as somebody who's never saw rust before, and he's going to tell you it's a lot worse than it is. We see that happen a lot. So if you're on the West Coast and you have a mechanic that doesn't want to see any type of rust at all, don't buy an East Coast car because they're all going to have it. When looking for a used car, I think the best area in the country is the Northwest area of the country. There's just no rust up there. So when you're looking at old cars, as long as they've spent their whole life in that area, they're usually in really good condition. The southern states are that way too. As long as you stay from middle of the country west, they can be good cars too. Dry climates are always a good place to look for used cars.
Buying a used car, especially sight unseen, can be a very scary process, and you should never do that without getting the car inspected first. And the best and easiest way to have that done is using the Lemon Squad. They are an amazing resource that can almost immediately inspect a car for you anywhere in the country. They have no hidden fees, they're the largest company in the industry, and they have the fastest response times in the industry. So check them out now at the link in the description below. You can use the code VinWiki for a 10% discount, and they will literally go tomorrow and check out any car in the country that you are looking to buy. It is the best way not only to find out if you're being scammed, find out if the car is a piece of garbage, and to make sure that you're buying exactly the car that you're looking for. So next time you buy a car, make sure to use the Lemon Squad.